Welcome to this first enrichment video on the principles of macroeconomics. And since this is the first video, we're going to start by asking, why should we study macroeconomics? Why is this an important topic? And the one variable that we're going to study throughout the course, almost every section will focus on it, is real GDP. So specifically today we'll focus on real, not nominal GDP. And the question that a lot of people ask is, so what? We know that a country can be richer or poorer, it can have more production or less production, but does that actually help us get what we really want out of life? Maybe happiness, satisfaction, something like that. And we'll look at the evidence for that. So one reason to be skeptical is that, first, there's a truism. Common sense says you can't buy happiness. Money can't buy happiness. There's actually been some psychological studies, the most famous of which was done back in 1978 that looked at lottery winners and people who didn't win the lottery. So people who were rich for no apparent reason, just randomly, and people who were, not rich, just average people. And the lottery winners didn't seem to be happier. In particular, they seemed to sort of habituate to their new level of wealth. So they just got used to it and then took less pleasure in the basic, ordinary aspects of life. Specifically, you can see in the abstract here. They took less pleasure from a series of mundane events in an experiment. So this gives us some cause for concern. I mean, GDP is great, you can produce more, everyone can consume more, but maybe that won't actually make us happy. So economists have dug into the international data, they've done surveys, they've worked with people who have done surveys around the world and asked people, how satisfied are you with your life on a scale from 1 to 10? And then you can look at the relationship between the average score in each country and its GDP. And when you plot them out, you get something like this. Poorer countries are here on the left, richer countries are here on the right, and you can see that there's a definite upward trend. If I draw in a line of best fit, it would look something like this. You'll notice that on the x-axis here, that's on a log scale. So each time you see as we move one step to the right, income doubles. So it looks like there is diminishing returns to higher GDP. You have to go from, 4,000 to 8,000 and then 8,000 to 16,000 to keep incrementing your happiness, but there's a definite difference between Malawi and Afghanistan here on the left, and Burundi, and Denmark, Finland, the US, Ireland here on the right. So it looks like maybe, possibly money can buy happiness. This is just a correlation, and as you know probably if you took a statistics class, correlation is not causation, but it definitely sort of confirms that GDP might be something that's really important and worth studying throughout the course. That said, you will notice a few odd things on this graph. There are countries like Hong Kong that are very rich. Hong Kong's one of the richest countries in the world, way out here on the right. But its average level of happiness is only a 5.5, which is about the same or actually a little bit lower than countries like Jamaica, which has a GDP per capita of 1/8 as much, just 4,000, and Venezuela, which is also very poor. So even though GDP is probably important clearly from this graph, there are a lot of other things that really matter to people's happiness that are going to vary from place to place. And you can see that in how even rich countries can be very sad and poor countries can be pretty happy places. Our next topic is, so if GDP can buy happiness, but it's not that great at it, or maybe you're skeptical that that correlation is really showing causation, can GDP lead to better health? We saw some evidence for this in lecture, and I just wanted to show you this, what's called the Preston curve that relates GDP on the x-axis, not on a log scale here, to life expectancy. And you'll see that richer countries here on the right really do have people who live longer than poorer countries on the left. Although you notice that most of the gains come at relatively low incomes. So countries that are extremely poor, like these countries here, they have high child mortality rates, people are malnourished, they die in their 20s and 30s, they die from infectious diseases like malaria that we can treat for just a couple dollars each. But then once you have a little bit higher income, you become like China, Mexico, even India, which is still pretty poor. Now you can afford most of the medicines, everyone can afford food. For the most part, almost everyone can. And life expectancy climbs into the high 60s. But from that point on, there still is a definite upward trend. It's just not that steep, where you move from the high 60s when you have GDP less than 10,000 towards the high 70s when you have GDP around 30,000. So it looks like, again, this is just a correlation, but when you can buy more stuff, when you can produce more, you can produce better health technology, more food, cleaner water, and you're going to have people not dying from diseases that, like infectious diseases or impure water or just from lack of nutrition, the way you'd see in a poorer country. There's a few things I just want to point out on this graph as well. There's a few countries here that are kind of rich, but have really low life expectancies. These are countries that are very hard hit by AIDS, so they kind of stand out. They're outliers, is the statistical term, because the AIDS epidemic really ravaged them, and they're kind of unusual. So if you throw out these countries, you see an even stronger upward trend. And the other thing to notice is that even among the rich countries, look at Japan. Its life expectancy on average is over 80. Nowadays, women in Japan can expect to live to 86 years of age, whereas in the US, life expectancy is only about 78, even though it's quite a bit richer than Japan. So even with health, just like with happiness, it looks like GDP isn't everything. Obviously, a lot of other factors contribute to health, but it's worth something. And then another study I wanted to make you aware of, this is not something you need to know for the course, is the Whitehall study. Even if you look within countries, the people with higher income and higher status tend to live longer. And what they did in this study is they looked at all the British civil servants, so people who work at different pay grades and different levels of status within the civil service, but otherwise have pretty similar lifestyles. They live in the same culture, in the same country, work in the same place, London. And they looked at how long they live and how many heart attacks they have and so on. And people who had higher incomes had lived longer on average. So you can see this, that having more resources, more production leads to better health, or is at least correlated with better health, even within countries. So overall, we've seen some evidence that GDP and production is important both for how happy people are and how healthy people are. And those are probably the two most important things we think about when we think of a good life. Are you satisfied with your life? And are you not dead? So GDP seems like something that's going to be worth spending our time studying over these next few months. Thanks for watching.